All right, we'll call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Stiff,
Present.
Mr. Kennedy,
Here.
Mr. Edmond,
Present.
Mrs. Lynn,
Here.
Mrs. Guerrero Numer,
Present.
Mr. Bean,
Here.
Mr. Coffey.
Here.
March. March. Other way. Pulse. Right. Face. Pulse. Colors. Present. Arms.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States
of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. Arms. Right. Face. Forward. March.
Thank you. Thank you. We'd like to welcome all to this meeting and all our visitors. On behalf of the Board of Education, I would like to welcome all our visitors in person and those who's watching via live streaming. At this time, members of the public may make comments just to the Board of Education on any item listed on the agenda. Please note that this is not the opportunity or venue for Board of Education members to engage in conversation or to provide response. Board of Education respects and values the information delivered to us during public comments. Masks are required to be worn by staff, students, and visitors while in our buildings. Therefore, masks must be worn during public comment. The comments should be directed to the Board of Education, and all attendants must conduct themselves in a respectable and civil towards others. Due to the number of individuals who have signed up for public comments, you must conclude your comments in 3 minutes. Thank you.
We don't have any public comment for this agenda.
So there's no public comments. We'll continue with our agenda. Can I get a motion to approve consent agenda
So moved.
A through E? Can I get a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Guerrero Numer,
Yes.
Mr. Bean,
Yes.
Mr. Coffey,
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Edmond,
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn.
Yes.
It's customary, Superintendent, have this agreement that she takes over the superintendent reports. Thank you, Dr. Goose.
Sure. I don't have any correspondence or legislative report at this time. However, I do have a couple presentations. So we are going to begin with the 2021 Advanced Placement presentation presented by Mr. Paul Oswald. And Mr. Oswald, if you can just make sure that the microphone is on so those listening and streaming can hear. Thank you.
Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Paul Oswald. For those of you who do not know who I am, I'm the Curriculum Director for Social Studies, World Languages, and our ELL Program Director. Good evening.
Good evening.
It's okay. All right, I'm going to share some information with you, and I'll have some time for some questions at the end, or really any time during the presentation. If you see something, please feel free to ask. So the 2021 Advanced Placement Program, as we'll see, it was a very challenging year for a lot of reasons. We're going to look at the data, but we do have some plans in action to move forward in what we were doing and a lot of the successes that we had to get back to that. So we'll get started. Our mission here, just a couple things to highlight in the JTHS mission and then with our AP College Board Equity Statement. We really want to make sure that all of our students have the opportunity to participate in the AP program. And with that being said, we want to make sure that not only do they have the opportunity, but then they're supported while they're in the AP Honors Program. So we do abide by this. We're going to see that we do have some inroads that we have to make within our program, but as a program itself, we're hitting a lot of these components within our mission and the equity statement there. Our goals of the program, these are rolling goals that we've always had, I think, from the very get-go. We continue to strive for increasing our number of students enrolled in our AP courses, increase the number of course offerings, increase the percentage of underrepresented students and low-income students in our AP program, increase the number of students who take AP exams, increase the number of students who receive a 3 or higher on the AP exam, and then lastly, increase the percentage of exams that receive a 3+ on the exam itself. And our goal for that is at a 60% level, okay? And then once we have those in place, we want to make sure that we are supportive of all of our AP and honors students. So how did we do? Like I said, it was a very challenging year. So take these results, I think, with a little bit of, with a grain of salt, if you will, because we have made a lot of strides throughout, the past 5, 7, 8, 9 years. We're seeing increased growth. So last year, we are seeing some dips in there. So when you look at this particular slide, our district AP demographic data here, in this 2021 and the breakdown of our subgroups, something to notice is that we did see a slight dip in our Black and Hispanic subgroups in terms of actually taking the AP exam. And then we also look at, on the far right, the district percentages of our report card from 2020. So what we are trying to do is try to make that as equitable as possible to look at our student population compared to what our student population is in the AP program. Okay. Performance-wise, we did see, for the most part, each subgroup go down a bit. I think our Black subgroup went down just a little bit. It was pretty similar there. So we are seeing across the board that our mean scores went down from our 2020 highs down to about that mid-2s, low-2s across the board. We also saw a significant dip in the number of AP scholars that we had. At our high, we had 197 last year, down to 58. These are awards that are given basically as a cumulative approach for students who are taking AP exams on the higher for multiple AP exams throughout the course of their high school career. So we did see quite a dip there. As I think you'll see a trend here that we are seeing some dips here. Our participation we are seeing from 771, these are the amount of students that participated in the AP program. So we went from, I look at our high as 1125 down to 771. A trend that I'm seeing a lot when I go through the data is that what we see in 2021, we really saw back in 2014, 2015. So we lost about 6 years as a result of the pandemic and then remote learning in that capacity. So we have a lot of ground to make up, but that's really what I'm seeing with all of this, whether it's going to be student participation or scores. That's kind of where we're at, district-wide and by campus. The demographic breakdown, as you're seeing, is kind of staying a little bit the same here in terms of the ratios, but we do see a dip there. We saw our two subgroups that had the highest amount of participation, which was the gray, which is our Hispanic population, and then the gold bar, which would be our white population. So it's somewhat consistent, but we do see that it has gone down. These are the amount of exams that were ordered and were taken this past year. Again, a high in 2019 of 1790 down to 1154. So we do see a dramatic decrease in the amount of exams that were given. So we hope to rebound from that. The exams by demographic, again, it correlates with what we saw with those students who are actually in the program, and then the exams that they are taking. And then our percentage of students, these are actual individual students that got a 3 or higher on at least one exam. We went from 602 yard signs that we did last year to about 358. So again, we're looking at that number of 254 for West Campus and 124 at the Central Campus. And again, that's correlating to about our 2015, right in there levels. So like we said, about 6 years behind. Next slide, when we're looking at our percentage of total exams with a score of 3+, again, I mentioned earlier on that we're looking at a 60% threshold. That's our goal every year. We were really on our way. We had 52% as of last year, and we went down to 40% this past year. Breaking it down from Central and then West and District, we're looking at Central percentage of total AP students with a score of 3 or higher. We went from 52% to 47%. Again, our goal typically is 60%, so we were on our way up there. Notice the trend that was going up, and then we just saw that come down in 2021. Same thing at the West Campus. We went from 62%, so we actually hit our goal last year. And then at West Campus, we did go down to about 46%. So as a result of that, we're looking at district-wide, we're at 47% of our AP students get a 3 or higher. So like I said, we have a lot of work to do still to get to that point of going back to 60%. This next slide of data, what we want to see in the 2021, we want to look at the numbers of 5s and 4s and 3s going up, and then our 2s and our 1s going down. What we did notice, though, in 2021 is our 5s, 4s, and 3s went down, and our 2s and our 1s went up. So we have that inverse with what we wanted, what had actually occurred. So that's where we're at with that. Now, I don't want to do all the doom and gloom, like that's what our data suggests, but there's a lot that, when you have a chance to look through the data, you're going to notice that there are a lot of really good success stories. And, with our AP Human Geography, for example, with our freshmen, we actually perform better than the state average. So there are some things that we can leave here with and say, yes, we did a really good job in certain areas. And barring the circumstances, I think we did a fairly good job. Is there room for growth? Absolutely. But considering what we went through, I think we're in a pretty good way of going about our business moving forward.
Can I just add, Mr.
Yeah.
Oswald, for the board? So during the 2020 scores, that was the year that we went into, we had to quarantine in March. So students had access to all that AP content through March, And the College Board responded to the whole state or the whole nation shutdown by cutting out content for students in all the areas. So not only did students have most of the school year with their teachers in person, going through all the content, but the College Board cut content when the students took the test. The 21 school year, this College Board did not cut any content. So students were expected to master all the content in their courses, and we were remote through March. So it was actually inverse of, like, if you compare 2020 to 2021, it was an inverse situation. So, you know, we were behind the 8 ball from day one in regards to our students. And our teachers did the best that they can with the situation that they had, engaging our students remotely, but to navigate to that depth of content in a remote environment. And going back in March and not all students went back in March, and to establish those routines to get ready for testing, it wasn't favorable for all of our students. But like Mr. Oswald said, there were pockets of success, and that's in the appendix that you could take a look at. But we do have a plan moving forward, but it's going to take a couple years to readjust.
Okay. Thank you.
We're supported, for those of you who do not know, our AP program is supported with the AP grant. So normally, we get around $50,000 a year to support what we're doing. Because of the pandemic, we actually were rolling FY20 and FY21 funds concurrently. So there were kind of like a tale of 3 different time periods that we were looking at. And so we were using money for different things, supporting teachers, supporting students in different intervals and different times. So it was a little confusing at times, but we did a really good job of allocating those funds for different areas, and I'll show you what those look like. The AP grant was in fact approved, and Corinne Zimmerman, my colleague in science, is going to be running the AP grant moving forward. So I'll still be working with her on how we're going to allocate some of those funds. She has some excellent ideas for that. The bulk of the program, though, is supporting students in the professional development, so there's a lot of monies that went towards that. And then we do have to make sure that we spend 20% going towards the College Board, and that was a challenge in and of itself with everything virtual. Some of the supports that we had A+ hours per teacher per course for curriculum and planning hours, AP exam review and tutoring hours available. We did do some great professional development. We did have some one-day AP workshops in person way back when, October of 2019. And then we also saw some virtual offerings there. We had a lot of teachers go to 1-week AP Summer Institutes this past summer, including those not just teaching AP, but also those who are supporting our AP and Honors program. So they have a lot of background now in what we're doing in the AP program. And then we had our first, journey into AP mentoring. And we saw that with 2 U.S. history teachers, an English lit teacher, and our U.S. government teacher. So they went through the 12-month-long virtual mentoring program. And then we did have a chance to purchase a lot of supplemental materials that we'll have for the long term in a lot of areas in the social studies and sciences. So we're well stocked with a lot of supplemental texts. Looking ahead, I really want to leave with this where, yes, we did see some dips there, but looking ahead, we have, I'm very confident that we're going to come back stronger from this. Because of the resources that we had in FY20 and FY21, we've replenished a lot of that professional development, a lot of those resources, so our teachers are going to be ready to go and working with their students. So there's a silver lining there for a lot of our teachers to get that professional development. So we're looking at those who are new to AP. We're also looking at offering professional development in terms of a Dream Deferred Prepare-A-Day conference for working with our African American and Hispanic students. And that is also going to be not just for teachers, but also for some administrators too, as we're working through the program. Continue to provide additional time for teachers to collaborate and plan outside of the school day, especially across campus. Seeking out additional methods for recruitment and support of our underrepresented populations, especially our African American students. So what we're looking at there's a lot of opportunities in the FY22 grant, including mentoring programs, a steering committee. We're looking at reaching out to a lot of districts that are successful in increasing underrepresented student populations in their AP program. So I have a lot of colleagues in different areas around us that are very successful in that, so we'll continue to explore that. Overall, though, it's really about building our culture, especially at the freshman level. That's going to play into what we're looking at in bullet point number 4, is looking into the possibility of offering a pre-AP program. We're going to be looking at looking into pre-AP world history and geography for all of our freshmen. So we'll be having that as an opportunity, and that could be a pipeline then of getting more students, a lot more students, especially our underrepresented students, into an AP course, whether it's going to be sophomore, junior, or even senior year. So we're looking at that in many different areas. It could be English, it could be social studies, so we're in that, we're working through that right now. And then I know, talking to Corinne, we're also looking at identifying specific areas to focus in on. I know we're looking at our sciences to see how we can support that, how we're aligning what we're doing, and then seeing what specific areas we want to really focus in on and get better at. And then overall, we're looking at getting back to our pre-pandemic levels and moving forward with that. And so here's our current enrollments, and then I brought up the 2019 numbers here, and just to kind of give you a little bit of perspective. So in 2019, we had 1,765 students who sat for the AP exam. Right now, we're looking at around 1,976 students currently enrolled in an AP course. Now, again, they're not all taking the test. We want them to take the test, and the College Board is going to still implement that students will have to commit by October 31st. So we're looking at a net gain, if everybody's going to sit for the exam, of over 200 students taking an AP test. So we're definitely going in the right direction. I think we're in a really good place considering. So with that, does anybody have any questions about any of this?
We pay for the exam, sorry. We pay for the exam for students who show need?
We do. There is, the buildings are incredible, working with Chad and Teresa. We're never going to allow a student not to take a test because of they can't afford it. So we're really good at offering assistance, especially for those students who are taking multiple AP exams. I think the current price tag is, I think they changed it maybe about $97 for the actual test. There is assistance for free and reduced lunch. I think that's around in the 40s. So we do have opportunities for that to occur.
I have a second question. So, is either seeking out additional methods for recruitment, to support the underrepresented populations?
Yep.
So when I looked at the numbers, there was, as expected, all the numbers dropped in the enrollment, but it was a drop of 80% for the white children, and then a 30% drop, so 10% more kids drop for Hispanic, and then 27% drop of the number of kids enrolled for the black students. So my question is, have we figured out why the percentage is so much higher with our Hispanic and black students, and how can we address that? Because if we don't know the why, we don't know, got to gear our recruitment towards the why so many more kids dropped.
Yeah, I don't know exactly the why, like why the subgroups are not taking the drop off there. I think it's a matter of, if I had to guess, I think especially from last year, it could be the access, it could be students who are new into the program, maybe for the first time, who haven't gone through the program for multiple years. When going through an AP course remotely is a lot different than doing it in person and having those supports. So I think when we're looking at something like that, I think when we're how to tackle that would probably be more so with AP mentoring going on, a lot more AP summer enrichment going on, and to bring them in. And I think if we're able to run the pre-AP course of giving them that skill set, not just with the courses themselves, but a lot of the soft skills as well to kind of manage, going through a program like that. So it's not about, I think something, when we're talking about not just recruiting students, but it's also going to be how do we support the students that are then in that program so they're not going to, just drop out at any time. We want to be able to support them. We want to get a good representation of our student body in the AP program, and so this way they'll be successful.
Ms. Lynn, though, to answer, one thing that we could do in the future is establish some questions for students as to why they might not be taking an AP test or an honors class that could be something that we incorporate into a student survey to get to that answer, because that might help inform some of our supports.
Yes, that's what I was.
I don't know if we can figure out why those kids didn't, but maybe we can figure out maybe why or what's the hesitation for current students. So we could look at doing something like
Yes.
that.
I just have an issue, I just have a particular issue. This been a driving point for me for 5 years being on the board. Because I see a certain demographic is sustainable and they sustain. But we've been struggling with this particular group for 5 years. And we're steadily trying to see different methods that I don't see what the methods is, but we still maintaining a level for others. But this particular group that the board member suggested an answer to, I'm still seeing that we're trying to reach or search or scratch for an answer for this, and I'm still puzzled by that.
I could add to that too, because being a curriculum director, we've had many conversations about this. I really think there's many factors that lend itself to this. And a lot of it is that our students of color don't see themselves in possibly the honors and AP classes, because they don't see, so if I don't see me in this class, then I may be hesitant to take this class. So what we've been trying to, our teachers push out and promote and try to encourage students to take the class. So what we're proposing that would go for the 23-24 school year is that our freshman class of World Affairs become a pre-AP class for everyone. So right now, all our freshmen take either World Affairs or AP Human Geography. And what we're proposing is that World Affairs becomes a pre-AP class where we build in those skill sets for all students so that they're comfortable with the expectations of an AP class. And then it's that confidence, and they're with all, everybody's getting the same experience. And then they could go into, say, AP psychology their sophomore year, or AP environmental science, and we're gonna do the same thing with English 1. So right now, at the freshman level, there's English 1 and Honors English 1. And what Mr. Oswald and Mr. Hackney are looking into is taking that college prep English 1 and utilizing the College Board's curriculum to make it a pre-AP English 1 course. So we're building in those pre-AP skills in that foundational class, so that, and then they would take possibly pre-AP English 2, and then junior and senior year are those AP classes. So really, we have to build that foundational skill set and confidence and support them at the beginning, rather than saying, hey, you should try, AP environmental your sophomore year. We have to start at the freshman level, and we have that small pocket of AP human geography, but that's not for all students. But if we push out those skill sets for all students their freshman year, I really think we're going to see just that movement, that level of confidence, and a greater level of support amongst all students.
I like your answer, but it's like returning a cruise ship. And I know it take about 5 years probably to turn it, but it's been 5 years. And I'm saying now you're gonna take this cruise ship and turn it another 5 years. And I'm just curious on why wasn't that suggestion made?
Great question. So I think, to be honest, when we were looking at it, I think we were trying to build it from what we were, we're coming in from 8th grade now into freshman year, and I think our approach was not as impactful. It's almost like we needed to grow our own within. And the reason why we didn't start 5 years ago is because the pre-AP program didn't exist 5 years ago.
Okay.
So the pre-AP program was in a pilot stage for, I believe, the past 2-3 years, and only certain schools can apply and get it. And then they were able to vet a lot of the programs throughout the entire country. So now it's going to be something that's offered for all schools, with the caveat that it's going to be for all students. And so we have to make sure that this is not something where it's going to be for one group of students or for another group of students. This is going to be for all students that are going to have the ability to then hopefully take those skills, because all of those skills are going to be aligned with what they're going to be doing in AP, and then they'll be able to get that foundation and hopefully get that confidence, as Ms. McDonald was talking about, to then at least try to get into an AP course, maybe not sophomore year, but probably maybe junior year or even senior year where they have more options.
So you're gonna wait until 23, 24, you're gonna start with the kids now to get them geared towards it next year?
We have to go through the process, so with the College Board, who's going to run pre-AP, so we have to go through them. There has to be a level of professional development that occurs, because the curriculum and the assessments are very different than what we have currently. So I'm just speaking for World Affairs and how pre-AP would look. How they develop it is going to be, it's not like we can start just right away. We're going to be building foundations. We can start trying a lot of the, to work with a lot of the resources, to work with some of the assessments in our courses this year and into next year, but then we'd roll it out that following year. And this is also, when I talk to my colleagues who are running a pre-AP program, that's typically what they're doing as well. Not to say that we're just going to say, oh yeah, we're just going to wait for 2023. I think we're still doing a lot of the, when we're looking at like a mentoring program or we're looking at a steering committee to see how we can improve, I don't think we're going to drop the ball on, well, that we're just going to wait till 2023 and kick the can.
So currently, who's taking the AP test? Just students in AP?
Primarily, we do have some students who take the AP exam that don't take the actual course, but 99% of the time, or probably 99.5% of the time, they do enroll in the class to prepare them for the exams. Some students in like an AP Spanish language could take the test by not taking the course, but those are few and far between. I could probably count on one hand. how many
Really,
times
in
I've seen
like
that.
maybe a musical area too, that can occur. But other curriculum isn't necessarily aligned to the AP test, so that class wouldn't necessarily prepare them for the test.
So you mentioned the pre-AP course at the freshman level. That's not going to preclude current freshmen from taking AP Human Geography.
No, it would be pre-AP, and then there would also be AP Human Geography. And the reason why we want to keep that up is the AP Human Geography is doing a fantastic job. The four teachers that are running that are totally vested in it. They do a fantastic job. Our students do a fantastic job. And really, when we're looking at the freshmen who are taking pre-AP, they can also then take AP Human Geography that sophomore year if they wanted to. So we would see probably some sophomores in AP Human Geography, and I think they would do even better by taking the pre-AP.
Well, and the pre-AP classes are already required classes as they are, right? Your World Affairs and your English one. I like it. I think that it's a good way to scaffold those skills to get those kids up to that level. They might think, maybe I don't quite have the skills to get there, and that may be some of the why. I'm hopeful that that's what the gap was, and this helps close that gap. So just keep us updated for sure.
Wait, sorry, just to clarify, so if you're in World Affairs right now, you could still take next year, you could or you couldn't take an AP class, Human Geography next year?
You could take Human Geography next year if you,
Or another AP class.
Or another, okay.
or World Affairs. So we would only offer the pre-AP World Geography, or the World History/Geography for the 2023 school year.
Okay.
Students could also go into AP psychology, I believe, their sophomore year, correct?
Or AP European History.
There's some
Out
other
of
choices.
preset.
Yes,
Yeah.
yep.
Thank you.
And one last question. I love the yard signs and the advertisement. The kids get great satisfaction of having that in their yard and neighbors and things. Are we doing any networking at the junior high level to let these our feeder schools know, like, hey, this is what we got. Start thinking about it today.
We do. We have an articulation with all our sender schools, and we actually push in and do presentations. And we share out not only the academics, but our activities and athletics. So we do push in and do presentations for all the 8th grade. And then we offer the 8th grade preview night and curriculum night at both campuses in December, so families can come over and see all the different offerings that we have. And then when they sit down with our counselors in January, when they have their registration appointments, they'll walk through like the different course offerings and They'll talk about what your career interest is, and they'll give them guidance on what their freshman year can look like, and then your sophomore, junior, and senior year.
Good, thank you.
I have a question,
Yeah.
a couple of questions. One, I don't know what CTE stands for, but we seem to be, was it?
Career and technical education.
Yeah, we seem to be above the average for, I don't know, like, killing it. Do we know what's working there? At first I thought maybe it's the nature of the course, but then I look at fine arts and it's not. So when you look in the appendix, I think it's page 103.
It's, so one thing I can say about that is that that's an elective, so students who go into that area are highly interested in that area. And so computer science, principles, that I believe is the entry-level course for, computer science. So that runs usually, there's another AP course in that area that doesn't always run because it's the higher level. But that AP Computer Science Principles course is a gateway course. So kids, freshmen to seniors can take that course, so it's either interest or they might already be skilled in that area. Same thing with AP Art, 2D Design. Those are your students, in AP Studio Art. Those are students that are usually interested in going into, like a program in college, and so they've already taken some art classes, and there's not an end number here, but I would venture to guess that it's a small number of students who complete their portfolio. So, that's why you would see that higher number. It's not a huge number there.
Yeah, okay. I mean, we're still higher than average, though. I mean, other schools are probably having the same interest in the same. It just seems to be like something's working there. I don't know what it is. And then the other question is, when we're brainstorming these ideas and how to get underrepresented students to take AP, the decision makers, right? Is that group diverse, right? Are we reaching out to people that look like the underrepresented for some of those answers? Like, because I'm thinking, you know, it sounds like a good idea to get them on that pre-AP class, but they still have to look in the other classroom and see a person not like them, see a teacher not like them. I'm just wondering if that will even work, and if somebody in the room that can add some diversity to thought, you know.
Yeah, and I think as part of that steering committee, I think not only staff, but also looking at students to be part of that.
Yep.
And looking at their experience and what students of color were going through in, you know, freshman year, sophomore year, not having that opportunity to see somebody in another classroom that looked like them. And then bringing them into that mentoring program, I think that'll be very impactful as well. Yeah, you're right. I think that's a great step into doing that. One last thing, talking about, besides the pre-AP, I mean, we're also looking at AP Capstone and AP Research. So those are other avenues in which we offering more opportunities in different courses to attract more underrepresented students in the AP program. So that is on the horizon. We're doing some research into that. That is another one that we have to apply for with the College Board, so that might be a little bit of time out, but.
I understand that we had a year that we was hindered by. And I do understand that, so I'm not dismissing that. It's just that the previous years before, and then some know that when I hear that narrative again, it's disturbing to me, because I don't know the why. Because we keep putting that up, but I don't hear the why. And then I don't see what we actually are doing to compensate for that why. So, as long as you keep putting it up there, you better give me why you have it up there and what are we doing.
Right,
Okay.
I mean, we're trying. We use
Okay.
a lot of tools at our disposal, you know, that are there or are now present.
Right.
You know, we've used AP Potential, and, you know, that has provided some success. But yeah, you're right. I mean, we have, you know, I think we're stuck in neutral, and I think hopefully
I understand.
start getting in a drive here.
I understand. I just want to let you know that I'm noticing it very much. So I'm supportive of that. I'm supportive of that because I know we have a tremendous district that we can put our students in a tremendous position. But I said this before, I don't want us to be celebrating AP students on the behalf, on the backs of others that's down below. So I don't want everybody rising and celebrating, but we still saying these underpopulated people, we got to do something with them. But, you know, I don't want to keep hearing the but part, and that's what I hear too much, okay? Thank you.
If I can say one more thing, because I keep hearing the curriculum and I'm trying to make sure I word this correctly. Curriculum's not going to fix everything. Like, having a new curriculum is going to help, but unless we understand how our underrepresented kids learn, how they process, we can put the best curriculum in front of them, and unless we have the trained teachers to teach kids who are the underrepresented, understand the cultural norms and things like that, it's not going to fix getting the kids enrolled in the class. And so, yes, this is, but is the actual AP prep class addressing those issues within the class core content to change that mindset, to understand why this is the why, because nothing's going to get fixed, like Mr. Evans said, unless we understand that why.
That's why we don't want to rush what we're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so our next presentation is actually a large group. It's our update on school climate and culture and restorative practices presentation. And so there's a lot of people that were part of this, but Mrs. McDonald, Dr. Gibson, Mr. Hallahan, Mr. Markham, Mr. Randich, Mrs. Parker, who couldn't be here tonight, and then I also saw Dean Boyder here, who I think is going to share some information as well. And really, the purpose is to share where we're at, start of the school year, and then also our next steps. I think the microphone is off again too, so we might have to turn it back on,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
It's
you can see it
red.
blinking red.
So I think the information that we're going to share fits pretty well with Paul shared regarding AP enrollment and kids feeling attached and connected to school. And so part of what we know about students is when they feel connected to their school community, when they feel like people care about them and support them, then students are really willing to take risks and do things that might be more challenging or might be different in the academic area. And so when we're talking today, we're just going to give a little bit of an update on our school climate, culture, and our work in restorative practices. So not to read to you, but this is work that we've been working on for 3 or 4 years. And the reason Takara Parker's not here tonight is she's actually attending a Loyola cohort on school reform practices. So we've sent different staff members to the Loyola program to kind of learn about school reform, learn about equitable practices, and how best to meet the needs of our diverse students. So just real basically, the foundation of restorative practices is relationships. And when we started this work in restorative practices, it was because we wanted to establish and maintain a healthy, equitable, and caring school community. And so our goal is to build those durable relations that will assist us in preventing and addressing behavioral disruptions in a non-punitive way that supports accountability and enables healing when harm is caused. So if you don't start with the relationships, then it doesn't matter. Then people don't care to heal, to repair the harm. So that's kind of where we're at. It's really very much a community building process. And why we did this, like, if you've been around as long as I have, we had years when we expelled over 100 students. And what that meant for the community is that there were 100 kids that didn't have a high school education, and then their opportunities were really limited. So we know that when we rely on punitive discipline strategies, it really does result in further annihilation of the student as well as the family. There's kind of like this loss of hope. And research does suggest that those actions don't necessarily deter the behavior, but creates barriers for the student to come back and be successful in school, and thus further risk academic failures. So we do want to say that restorative practice does not mean there's not consequences, but there's an add-on to the consequences. So when misbehavior occurs, the goal is to work to understand the underlying reason for it, and then to come up with a response that can repair any harm that was caused, as well as work to change the student's behavior. And it's not a short-term solution. It takes a lot of training and a lot of building and a lot of patience, and I would say a lot of love and care for the students. So I'm going to turn it over to Shad.
Thank you. So as Dr. Gibson said, this is a process that takes some time because it's a paradigm shift. It's a mindset shift for many of us from what we probably grew up with, where there's a punishment, you learn your lesson, you don't do it again. And we know that for some students that's not enough. And so I shared this slide with staff last year in a presentation we did in May, and I think it captures what we're trying to do here. Is it's working with the student, not what we do to the student. And again, as Dr. Gibson said, there are still consequences, but they're consequences that are thoughtful and align with the root cause of why the student is exhibiting that behavior, and then how we can try and fix it, and putting supports in place. So we're working with the student to help them make better choices in the future. And Dean Boyder will be able to speak much better to that in a few minutes. But again, it's working with them and not just what we do to them. And we do have teachers who are using classroom agreements rather than establishing rules, because I think it's human nature if we all as a community, because as we said, it's community building, agree that this is how we're going to treat one another in this classroom. That's more impactful than this is my classroom, I'm the teacher, these are my rules, you're going to follow them. And so you get more buy-in, and the kids have ownership of how they treat one another and treat the teacher in that classroom, and that's the goal. Again, there are consequences, but we want to repair the harm. And as Teresa mentioned, we have to have a community first, a relationship first to rebuild. And so that's where much of our work has been so far. So again, just a timeline in 1920, so you can see how we got to where we are now. We started with a cohort of deans, counselors, social workers, and select teachers who worked with our professional development providers and learned a lot more about what restorative practices are and how to implement them in a school. And the classroom teachers who were in that group learned some strategies that they could take back with them and try in their classrooms. So they were kind of the trailblazers for us. And then, as we know, in March of 2020, COVID happened and things changed everything. And so we came back to school, well, remotely for most of it, but we were back in 2021, and we were still working on restorative, but we also knew that we had staff who had needs to be met. And so we focused on community building circles and kind of used a restorative approach and a community building approach with the adults, if you recall. And we did circles every SIP day so that we could provide support that our staff desperately needed as they were going through what they were. And in the meantime, help them learn some of those strategies, like conducting circles that they could take back and use with their students as well. And meanwhile, while our staff were doing that, the deans were getting some very targeted professional development and coaching from our professional development providers, and they, over the summer, revised their entire dean's manual, or administrative support plan, we call it. And again, Dean Boyder can speak to that. So then the plan heading into this year has been to continue professional development for teachers. And it's important to note that right now, because of COVID and how we had a shift 2021, our teachers and our deans and PPS staff are at a very different place with their knowledge and understanding and implementation of restorative practices. So we're trying to close that gap with professional development for teachers. But I think that may have been a cause, or is some of the cause of some misperceptions about what restorative really is. So as I mentioned, this year, staff received professional development and will continue to, and we called it an add-on year. So we weren't forcing teachers to try any of these strategies. We wanted them to take strategies that they were comfortable with, and take them back and try some of those in their classroom, while the deans, as I mentioned, were and the counselors and social workers, and they were much further along with implementing these in the responsive part of it after students have made a poor decision. And then I'll turn it over to Dean Boyder to just give you some information about how things are different from a dean and PPS perspective and the strategies they're using.
Thank you, good evening. It might be easier if you guys had questions about like what the work we're doing for me to answer than just to kind of rattle some stuff off. But I do want to say that, probably about a few years ago, and this is only a couple of years into being dean, I started to hate my job because I felt like it was so punitive and so prescriptive that where my expertise would come in is, I know this student, I know what's going on, we can fix this with a few other things. Why do we have to suspend right here? Why do we have to do some other things? And I know my fellow deans shared this as well. And we have data. It doesn't work. You can't punish kids into better behavior. We're an educational institution. When we tell kids to take risks academically, to learn from failure, to grow and get better from that, this allows us to do the same with behavior. Is that you messed up here, but let's teach you, let's work with you. Let's develop a plan so you can learn a better way and grow and get better. And this takes a lot of work, and it's really not easy. The easy thing is to say, you're done, get out of here. That's the easy thing. But the better thing to do, because our kids deserve it and they're awesome, is to work with them, to teach them, to use our experience as adults to show them a better path. It's going to take time though. And I can promise you that when the teachers do go through their training this year, by the time we start next year, the culture and climate of the district is going to be so much better. And we get really focused on the discipline aspect with restorative practices, but it's not that. We've said it already. It's about building relationships. It's about really getting to know people. You don't fear people whose stories you know. And that's probably the biggest thing that restorative practice is forcing, especially the adults, to, you need to get to know your students, and not how they perform on tests and things like that. That's part of it. But get to know what's their reason, what's their why for showing up, And the last thing I'll say is this. I am awed by our kids. Being in the dean's office, you see the worst, and you hear the worst. And you have to work with not the worst kids, but the worst situations. And I can't help but some days when I'm feeling like sorry for myself, to look at some of my students like, I can't believe you got out of bed today. And you're putting forth an effort, and you're trying to get better. And this allows us the opportunity to really kind of support those kids and to make a difference for them. Because let's be honest, I don't know how much we all remember from high school. Or I was a U.S. history teacher. I probably forgot a lot more than that, even from high school. But I remember how my teachers treated me. I remember how my teachers inspired me. I remember how my teachers showed me a better way in things. And I think those are the skills that our students bring with them into the community, into college moving forward. And this allows us to do it. And it's a way better method. So that's my spiel there. I didn't really give you much information on what we're doing, but I'll be happy to answer any questions you guys have.
I don't have a question, but I do have a suggestion, is that I always hear that, oh, we have to build a relationship or get to know our students. But sometimes when you tell your story and tell some of the challenges that you face, your students will then see you as a human being, and that's equally as important.
I think that's a great suggestion there.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
So I hear the word relationship. I am so for restorative practices, and so I want to make that clear. Like, I think it's best. Just from the stuff I'm reading and just different things I've seen put into place here, I see a lot of this is put on the teachers. Like, this teachers will do this. So I would like to know, how are admin and deans building their relationships? So what are the principals doing, assistant principals and different admin, to build that relationship, so it's not just on one subgroup of staff? And how are is support being put into the teachers so it's not all on them? So what are the principals' roles in this restorative practice? What are the dean's roles? What are the counselors' roles? Because it can't just be one group. So I guess what is more the outline of duties of different people?
Okay, well, I don't know.
You can speak to the deans and
Okay.
counselors and
So-
some of the things you're doing, you don't have to answer.
Yeah, so like throughout, so in our MTSS, our multi-tier system of supports, in our tier 1, this is where the teachers get the training, and this is basic things that I think the majority of our teachers do, because our teachers do have very good classroom management, they build relationship with the kids. And so in that first tier, and this is again what the training is, what the teachers are going through this year, that's for 80% of the kids. You know, that's the general information, the general skills go in there. The next 20%, all right, now there's 15% that need a tier 2 response, which the deans could give, whether that's maybe finding them into, like, one of the groups that I'm part of is the stress and coping group, or problem-solving circles for attendance and things like that, that can address those issues. And then we have certain students that need tier 3 supports, behavioral supports that go through the BHT, and those are addressed in, quite frankly, for a lot of these kids, like severe trauma that they're still trying to process through. And, you know, we all have students that we know some just horrific things have happened to them throughout their childhood that they just need a lot more intensive support there. So, yes, it does feel like a lot, and I understand where the teachers are, that a lot's being put onto them, but they are addressing that 80%, so that 20% that the deans, the counselors, social workers, principals, building admin can take care of those students. I think the ultimate thing, though, is one of the big reasons why last year with the circles, we did it with the community members, or not the community members, the adults in the school is, you know, it doesn't work, though, unless the adults in the building trust that everyone else is doing their job. If they think the deans don't care about a certain thing or won't support them on a certain thing, then you know, maybe they don't refer them, maybe they don't find out and ask deans for help with things, or counselors or social workers and things like that. I could, being part of the planning committee for the circles last year and seeing the data and the feedback, by the end of the year, the vast majority of our adults in the building who participated in it felt a greater sense of trust among the adults in the building. So I think continuing things like that also helps lift the burden, so to say, off of what the teachers may feel.
Yeah, I can speak to thank you, Brett, to the administrative side of it. You know, for example, Dr. Gibson and I are visiting every freshman advisory, so the students know who we are. I've been in about 25 of the 38 freshman advisories, and I spend about 10 minutes in there just because I want students to know who I am. And I also talk about getting involved and let them know that to make sure they have at least one adult that they can talk to if they're having any problems and so on and so forth. Our administrators, besides just Mr. Randich, I attend dean meetings, I attend counseling meetings. The next slide talks about continued professional development. Really, the deans are, and the PPS staff are a little bit further ahead. We do need to continue professional development for our administrators as well to expand their understanding of restorative. But in the meantime, we're trying to support teachers and our PPS staff and make sure that we can bridge that gap, like I mentioned, because right now they're in two different places. So I agree with you that we can't always put everything back on the teachers. You're absolutely right. But they're also the ones who are with the kids 90% of the time in the classroom and where it all begins. And so that's why I think that emphasis is often stated so much, you know. Go ahead.
Yeah, just, the other thing is, we also have a series of groups that different kids sign up for, and I know I did not do it last year because we were remote, but the prior 2 years, I had a girl group, freshman girls after first semester, and I identify kids based on how they did academically first semester. And so my first group of kids that I did are now seniors, and I make an effort to check in with them, because that first group, they're down to 6 from their freshman year, because that just kind of happens. The group that I had that are now juniors, like, we never really got rolling because it was a second semester thing. So there's administrators also that will do groups. My group really is all community building and goal setting. I'm not a clinician. And I always buy them lunch, because then they are very happy to come. But it is a great way to build relations, and we have talked with our other administrators who have done circle facilitation training themselves about using some of those same techniques if they need to do focus groups. Like, hey, Freshman Academy, I need to do a focus group to find out X, Y, and Z. It's a great format for them to do that as well.
And then I would also add, and it's probably in here too, because I know there's more information to be shared, but we reorganized with MTSS teams, multi-tiered system of support teams that are at grade levels. And we have 4 academy coordinators at each school who is the lead of those teams, with teachers from each of the core areas that we gave release time to. And deans are each assigned those teams, as well as counselors and social workers. And so we're looking to have those teams identify students who are struggling in multiple areas to take some of the burden off of teachers and just looking at individual referrals or such. And so we're trying to take a systematic approach to be able to serve our students. So for example, the Tardys, our plan for Tardys, that's going to the MTSS teams. Where deans will handle the more excessive type of Tardys, the MTSS teams will look for interventions to do that. That's a very simplistic individual type of piece, but we're looking at systematic approaches of doing things differently, so we have the capacity to help more students. And so we started with the deans because, again, I think as Dean Border talked about, the deans, it's nonstop when you're in the dean's office in the old system. It's nonstop in the dean's office if you're in the newer system, because the deans and the PPS department are working with the more significant needs of students, and then also to support teachers. So it's really everybody working together, and I think Principal Hallahan said that very nicely, but there's a lot of different things we're working on to ensure we have better supports in place from students, including the classroom level.
And so just to wrap up our part here about restorative, as I mentioned, this is a process that takes several years to do it right. And so we're a few years in, and then with COVID and other things, like most things, it got stalled a little bit, but we're on the right path. And so it's just continuing to grow and learn together and work together until we can get to where we need to be, where everyone has a full understanding of what it means to be a restorative school district. And like Dean Boyer said, and to work with our students and to help them and to get them where they need to be. So, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Markham.
All right.
So before you go, Shaq, before you go, just curious. I know we had to disconnect with the restorative practice, the understanding. I understand the teachers and the administration had a gap between that, but I was just curious on why do we have a hard problem catching on to the low-hanging fruit? And the low-hanging fruit I'm saying is the Tardys. I just don't think, some things that we could have just grabbed a hold to, do you think that what was the disconnect there where it made it seem like there was a misunderstanding of how many times or how long, or now I got to do a hall sweep? Why did we take so long to get to that point where we are today? Because I don't think restorative practice had anything to do with that.
Well, yes and no. And so you're right, that restorative didn't have anything to do with it, but it did to this extent, or let me explain why. Because we were transitioning to the deans, taking a more restorative approach, which takes significantly more time than just putting a student out for 2 or 3 days, because they have, and Dean Boyer didn't mention it, but they're doing like reentry meetings and creating reentry plans, and they're collaborating with the social worker and the counselor so that it's a team approach to working with kids. So in order to allow them the time to do that, we took dealing with Tardys off of the dean's plate. Because last year and previous years before that, deans were spending up to 3 hours a day just processing Tardy referrals.
Probably more than
There's
that.
no way that they could process Tardy referrals all day and effectively do the restorative work that we were asking them to do and that we needed them to do. The problem that occurred is that we did not, and I'll admit it, we did not have a concrete plan of how we were then going to address Tardys as we went into the year. I'm just being honest with you. We were too obscure, just saying like, provide the interventions that you would do as teachers, talk to kids, find out why they're tardy, keep marking them tardy, and then when you've utilized all the supports that you can and you need help, refer it to, the dean or to the, what's the other process that I'm forgetting right now? Request for support. But our staff, and this again speaks to that, kind of, we're in different places. Our staff, and it's not a negative thing, is very used to a very structured, when they hit 3, I do this. When they hit 5, I do this. And who's going to do that? And so we did not adequately provide a structure for them. That's the only thing I can say. And so
And that's on all of us. That's not in any one person. It's part of the shift of, and I think it's really true. We dropped the ball when it comes to tardies, and that's what we're trying to reset.
The only thing I'm saying is that I've seen a great improvement, where people may not see. I know I've seen. So I'm not sitting here, still bashing that particular point. Just wanted to know what was that disconnect, because I knew it was a disconnect there.
Yeah, no, it's a fair question.
And it was a disconnect, but I'm glad that there's been tremendous improvement in that area. And I just believe that we're going to be on an upward swing on this thing.
Well, and to add to that, Mr. Hallahan, it was probably more than 3 hours. I subbed plenty of times in the dean's office. You'd rip through 12 to 14 tardy referrals a period, right? And that could be a kid being 1 second late to each class 5 times, and we were excessively punitive with that, right? A kid's possibly 5 seconds late total, and now they're going to miss an entire hour of instruction. That's extremely punitive. Punitive consequence is okay, especially when there's severe issues that happen, physical violence, weapons, distribution of drugs, et cetera, right? But when we're talking about these lower level mischievous things, that is something that we need to be excessively restorative with, and we need to work with the kids, come up with plans, because if you're 5 seconds late to a class, you shouldn't miss an hour of instruction after that. So I understand where you were going with that. I'm glad you guys identified that you dropped the ball and that you're gonna fix it.
I have a question. Are teachers now aware of what a tardy policy is, and that there is structure, and they know what the structure is and how to implement it?
That's on Thursday, our academy coordinators will be presenting that plan to them. And so we fixed it to a degree, but we decided we still needed to be a little more prescriptive as we transition to a more restorative approach. So we addressed it, but not well enough, to be honest. So that's what's going to happen Thursday.
Okay, and then will that be shared, the tardy policy?
That's what's on Thursday.
Okay.
But what we're also, it's going to the MTSS teams that are
Okay,
led
on
by the
Thursday,
academy
that's going to-
coordinators.
okay.
Because one of the things that we're not gonna do is pull kids out of class for tardies when they were already late to class. So we have to figure out other ways of working with kids, but that's what we're gonna charge the MTSS teams to work on for groups and individual students and look at that data. So what we've been working on is how to better pull the reports so that we can desegregate between excused and unexcused tardies, because we are only a little over a year into our new student management system, and tardies were an issue last year when you only had a third of the population in the building. So we've had to redo how we get that data out of the system so that we can better track it. So that's what we'll be going over with staff on Thursdays and launching.
And then what we did already talk to staff about is the difference between like the low-hanging fruit of, a few seconds late or, up to 3 minutes because you're in the bathroom versus, hey, a kid's been wandering around. And if it's beyond 5 minutes, we want the teacher to write a referral so that we can find out where the student was.
So-
That we dealt with more as an unauthorized.
So that's being shared with staff on Thursday?
Yeah.
That, we shared that.
A couple weeks ago.
Okay, okay.
But not the tardies that are under 5 minutes. We
Okay.
shared some information, but not all of that.
Okay.
Well, what I really like is the uniformity of our district, that we all speak the same thing, and we're doing the same. Somewhat. I know our building logistically is not the same, but I do like to hear that we're doing the same thing. I don't want to go to West or Central and see that something is happening at one place that's successful, and another place it's not successful. I just love that we should learn from each other, and I'm liking this, what I see. I just hope that we continue that, because we as a board represent the whole district, not one school or another. Okay.
All right, thank you all. So, this next section that Mr. Ranch and I are gonna talk about, that we collaborated with Mrs. Parker on, is one of the things that we've learned through the restorative process in the dean's office is that some of our students, we know a lot of our students are struggling with transitions. We essentially have two groups of freshmen in the building at the same time, freshmen and freshmen two. And so we know that students are struggling with transitions. You know, we know that some students just thrive in a more supportive environment where they don't have to travel from classes. And Mr. Ranch is going to talk about some of the things that we've done internally to support students who have that need, but our capacity just with staffing and some of the challenges that we're facing fairly limited, so we're looking to expand that opportunity to support more students. So that's what we're going to speak about.
So if you look at this slide, on the left-hand side is what the buildings are doing. And if you look at the right-hand side, that's more of a district-wide support and intervention. We utilized our Gateway 2.0 program, essentially the same way as we did last year. What we learned, excuse me, what we learned from last year was that the Gateway students were in there all day, and they just needed a break. They needed to get out of that classroom, and quite frankly, in some cases, the teachers needed a break too. So what we learned is that, or what we decided with talking with students is that this year we want them to go out for their electives. We want them to go out for their PE class, and in some cases they go out for lunch advisory, but in some cases the students want to be in that environment where they're in there with that support. So they don't go out for, some of them don't go out for lunch advisory. We're at max capacity with that program. At Central, we're at 40, 42. I think at West, it's 25-ish. The reason for that difference, my understanding is that one of the last minute staffing issues is we had to use one of those teachers to fill a vacancy. So that's the reason for that difference there. In regards to the Pathways campus, we have the Alpha side and the Bravo side. Using the Bravo side, it is for students mainly with severe anxiety. We're pretty much maxed out there through our BHT program. We have referred students there, and so we're pretty much maxed out. So, you know, talking with students, working with students in the dean's office and getting to that root cause, we have learned, and we've pretty much known this for a while, but we have learned that our big buildings for a small percentage of students is just a lot of freedom, a lot of unstructure, and so we were looking at ways where we can support those students a little bit better. Just quickly on the left-hand side there, those are some of the interventions that the dean's office are using this year and quite frankly have used in the past. One note I would like to make is if you look at the student support groups, in years past, we would sign students up for these support groups. Counselors, social workers, in some case deans and other staff run the groups. Traditionally, those groups have not started until mid-October. This year, we saw the urgency and we were able to start our first stress and coping at both campuses mid-September, and one of our mindfulness programs our groups right at the end of September. So almost a month, if not 5 weeks earlier than we have in the past. And that's supporting our students in a better capacity. Mediations, we do those all the time. Anytime there's issues with any two students, we've been doing mediations for a while. Kind of a little bit of a refocus with the restorative approach, essentially still mediations. And then our adjustment to our intensive student support room instead of our ISS room has been successful. Still kind of learning where we go with that and build capacity there, but it's been a success so far.
So JR mentioned some of the programs that we have internally. Like he mentioned, those programs are at capacity now. We know that we still have additional students who need a more structured environment. So the request here that you'll see in the memo later is to use Lincoln School as an opportunity. Just to review kind of what is available at Lincoln School, there's two programs, the Regional Safe School Program, which is where the request lies here, and then the TAP program for students who have attendance issues. You know, we've talked a lot over the years about the Safe School Program and some of the concerns that we have, but we are hoping to use this as an intervention to avoid that expulsion process with students, because that is a traumatic process for any student and family to go through. And we'll talk more about what that looks like in a few minutes, but definitely I would just note that if we move forward with this, if we use this, we would differentiate in tracking the success of this. The request is for this year, right now in this moment, to support individual students at a tier 3 level. And we would look at that data separately and report out on that in June, the outcomes of students for multiple suspensions versus students in lieu of expulsion. And again, this is just, we're looking at right now in this moment, the needs that our students have and trying to meet those in any way we can.
And Mr. Markham, this is the use of Article 13 in our school code, correct?
Correct, and I'm gonna get to that in a minute, thank you.
Gotcha, yep.
Yep.
Love it.
So, just some additional supports, you know, as we were looking for options, I reached out to Lincoln School to get more information on what they're doing now to support students, because I know that's a concern that you all have, that we have shared over the years. And some of the things that they're doing this year that are a little bit different, they're doing individual check-ins. Their enrollment is significantly down, and so their staffing ratios are much better than they historically have been, so that's encouraging. They're running support groups within their school, which is fairly new for them. They use Casey Crino, who's a community member who we use for problem-solving circles. He goes into River Valley and supports those students as well. So that's an excellent addition. They also have a full-time school counselor there to do some of those groups. They're partnering with an outside agency for individual counseling, Magical Consulting, that's run by Carrie Johnstone, who used to be a social worker in Valley View and started her own company. So she comes in and does individual counseling for students. They set weekly SMART goals in terms of academic progress. They have academic counseling through that school counselor. And then students this year at Lincoln, they use some of their ESSER funds to purchase devices so that students can make academic progress beyond the school day using their Edgenuity program. So I'm fairly encouraged by some of the things that they're attempting to do a little bit differently. You know, I've made this presentation for 4 years now about Lincoln School, and I share a lot of the concerns, but I'm encouraged by some of the steps that they're taking and some of their ratio changes with staffing. And also I know from working with our deans and our counselors and our social workers that some of our students just need this structured environment right now. So as Mr. Kennedy alluded to, the article of the school code that allows us to use administrative transfers for multiple suspensions, it's up there. Essentially, the parameters are a student has to have been suspended multiple times. They have to commit an offense they have to violate school board policy and be eligible for suspension or expulsion. They cannot have an IEP, and they cannot be in the EL program in order to do this. And what we'll get into in a minute with the enrollment process, technically in school code, some school districts do this involuntarily. We will not do that. We will involve the families in the process. So much like we go through the process of problem-solving circles with parents and students, this would be a similar approach to an intervention. So, you know, if I'm a dean, if one of Dean Boyder's students come in and they've experienced a couple of severe incidents, we're not ready to make the decision to move to expulsion, we would work with the dean so that they offer this as an option for an intervention for students. Okay, and I think Mr. Ranch is going to talk about that right now.
Yeah, so, you know, if you look up here, again, getting back to that root cause, one of the interventions I didn't mention, but it was on the screen, is that our deans really are slowing down this year. We talked a little bit about that, removing the Tardys, et cetera. But they really are slowing down and getting to the root cause. The root cause is where we need to spend our time to figure out what's going on, okay? And so sometimes that involves the parents, many times that involves the parents in collaboration in a meeting. And so we are confident that our deans will be able to communicate with families that this is a good decision for them and the reasons for that. We're confident about that. Almost every time there's a severe infraction, a suspension from school, parents are back in the building meeting with students in the triangular team, deans and counselors and social workers. And so if a parent agrees with this, a meeting will occur with JTHS staff to complete the Lincoln referral and individualized learning plan. That's a process that we already have. That process is already in place for the in lieu of expulsion students. So we would basically follow that same process, all right? The referral would be submitted for approval, and then Lincoln contacts for orientation and enrollment. They contact the family, and they get the ball rolling for a visit and that sort of thing. And transition back, again, this is something we've been doing with our students that are at Lincoln and then come back. So we do have a transition process. Traditionally, it is in December and in May at the end of each semester. And so those students that are returning meet with the Director of Strategic Partnerships, the dean, a counselor. A Lincoln School counselor also comes to the buildings and is part of that meeting, the parent and the student. And then we just review the performance of how it went at Lincoln, successes, just any other thing we need to know about students. The counselors provide a preliminary schedule. So right there in that meeting, they're working on a schedule with the student, looking at what credits they earned at Lincoln and looking at what the programming will look like for students as they return to JT. And then parents and students identified needs and other possible accommodations. So at that point, hey, we understand you're at a smaller learning environment. You're coming back to our larger learning environment. How can we support you? What do you need? The counselors there from Lincoln to support that. We discuss if there's any SEL or BHT, behavioral health team needs. That's discussed there as well. Online registration is the norm now for almost all of our students, and it's, for some students and families, it's not the easiest thing to go through, so we just double check to make sure everything is good with registration at that point. And any of that information is given to families, so that there is no lapse in the time that they leave Lincoln and re-enroll at Central or West. And then opportunity to participate in problem-solving circles, if not already completed. We know that that's a program that students benefit from at a high rate. And so if they haven't gone through that, that opportunity is afforded to them at that time. So any questions for Mr. Markham or myself on this program?
I have one. Can you just tell us what's the difference in this program than what we're already doing?
Meaning from, placing a student at Lincoln School in lieu of expulsion? Okay, so, yes. So we are confident that our deans can identify students that just educationally need more structure. And if the dean continued with the way, and the student continued with the way it's going, we're concerned that the student would be possibly recommended for expulsion. So to sort of make the structure of the school day a little bit more compressed for them, we just feel this would be a good opportunity.
But Mrs. Stiff, for your question, I think for Lincoln, it's the same program. How a student gets into the program is different. So it's voluntary to go in the program as an intervention, but it's the Regional Safe School program is the same program.
Okay.
The enrollment is just different.
And I would add one more thing is that when we do this, instead of going through the expulsion process, it will allow us to complete problem-solving circles with the student and the family while they're attending the Safe School program, so that we can have a better plan in place when they come back. So that's the one addition that's different, is that when a student's recommended for expulsion and they attend in lieu of expulsion, we have to wait until they re-enter our campus to do problem-solving circles. We would hope to continue to use that while a student's placed at Lincoln, so that the plan can be in place and they can return more successfully sooner.
So to return, is there a time frame on it, or it's when the student improves?
So that would be agreed to with the parent, right? So through that initial meeting with the dean and the school staff, we would come to an agreement on what we feel like an appropriate amount of time is. It would either be, we try to do at the semesters, right, because they're in an online program and they'll lose out on credits if they come back in the middle of the semester. But so it would likely be either December or May, depending on the needs of the student and where the family's at and what they feel like the student would be successful.
And then just to add on that, I know we're probably all thinking that that means that they could come back sooner. We do have cases with students that go into the TAOP program where they start finding some success, and then there's a discussion about them staying maybe an extra semester, and that's what the parents and students want. So it just allows for a more flexible, I guess, arrangement. However, it's voluntary, so parents are agreeing to it. So we're all agreeing to it together, where in lieu of expulsion is really more involuntary.
I'm liking this process, and I guess I was really intrigued and was waiting for this, because I see this more of a restorative practice in the inside, coming in back. I didn't want to wait until the end. And I think that's what we're doing now. This is more of a, we seeing now what we got now way before they come. And I love this approach, and I thank you for it.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I like it.
Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up, and I want to say Shad and Brett set the platform and in regards to Tardies. So let's talk a little bit about Tardies and our plan. So this plan will be communicated to staff this Thursday. It'll be delivered by our academy coordinators, and we're allowing enough time so that teachers can ask questions for further clarification. So we're taking the approach on this plan that was developed by our administrative team. Really, it's broken down into proactive, because we know we have to put things in place to prevent this from happening, and then how are we going to react. So at the proactive level, we have needs at the classroom level, the building, and the district. And when we think about all three areas, it all comes down to relationships with students and staff, procedures in our classrooms, procedures in our buildings, and partnerships with each other and our families. So what we're going to be just emphasizing in regards to the classroom teacher, this is everything that I learned as a brand new teacher. And it's just a refresher, a revisit of just efficient and effective ways to build relationships with kids, greet them at the door, have routines in place at the beginning of the class, at the end of the class, so that that time, so like I'm greeting my students as they come in the door. So that concern that we've heard from students and teachers and families, that kids linger outside the door. If I'm standing out there, I'm greeting them, I'm getting them in my classroom. I have established routines in my classroom that my students know when they come in, they know what to do. We're asking teachers to have tardy logs so we can document which students are late, which students are excused, and which students are not excused. Same thing for the building level. We have expectations about building relationships, so being present in the hall, letting students see you, talking to students, procedures in the buildings in regards to announcements, like reminders for kids, 2 minutes left, hey, don't forget there's 2 minutes left in the passing period, a little music, and then more reminders, frequent communications from Mr. Hallahan and Dr. Gibson to students, leveraging our TNN and SNN broadcasting within the buildings just to remind students, and also and our partnerships.
Ms. McDonald, it also says on here, recognize and incentivize appropriate student behaviors. So are you guys still utilizing like the purple ticket thing with some drawings, or
I
what
think
are you guys doing?
I think the purple ticket has gone away, but they're coming up with, we still have purple.
Okay.
We still have purple tickets.
Yeah.
But I could share like Mr. Hallahan's campus, they're starting, it's called Steelman Stars. So students are recognized, they get little tickets, and then there are drawings. So really it's trying to incentivize good behavior, school spirit, different ways just to say, hey, we see you and thank you.
Awesome.
And if I could add to that, we went through, so first of all, Mrs. McDonald met with all of the curriculum directors and academy coordinators on Friday and went through this information with them. We met again as a whole administrative team. So part of the MTSS teams will be looking at too, there might be building incentives, but also at each grade level, what can be done.
Cool.
So that's also part of it.
Good, because I know we've gotten a lot of recognition for some stuff that's not the greatest. I'm glad some of the kids that are doing the right things are going to get some great
Yeah,
recognition for doing
absolutely. We
the
have
right
to
things.
say we see you and thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Awesome.
And also our commitment at the district level. So when district administrators are in the buildings, they're present, they're in the halls, they're having conversations with our students and staff. We will help out with allocating funds to those positive intervention programs. And then Dr. Guzman's frequent communications will put an emphasis on student attendance as well. So really it's a proactive approach. And Mrs. Lynn, I hear your concern about putting things on at the teacher level. But a lot of that, like I think we can all say is just basic structure in your classroom and like beginning of the class, end of class, and those routines that we all learned as brand new teachers, that really just make things, like kids need structure. And when there isn't structure, they can take advantage of that. So we will be providing professional development for staff who needs refreshers, beginning next week.
And I think it's important to note, we have, I'm gonna say our freshmen and what did Brett say, freshmen two? So we hired a lot of new teachers last year, and who started remote, and then never taught as a first-year teacher in our buildings. They only had 1,100 kids or 1,300 kids. So that's something we talked about too. So now we have 80 teachers who have started this year as new teachers. That's a large group, and not that they're brand new, but when it comes to some of the classroom management and some of the building behaviors, we have to do our part. And when I say that, that's not their fault. We have to do professional development with some of the strategies and utilizing instructional coaches and to do some of these things too, to make sure that everybody is at a good place and has the things in their toolbox that they need to have a successfully structured classroom that is a conducive environment for learning, building relationships, but then it also has the structure that, helps kids navigate in the classroom.
So then we're going to move on to our reactive, and we have expectations from the classroom level to the district level. So at the classroom level, we ask that our teachers, and we've given guidance. I didn't put all the details in here, and that will be shared Thursday, but we have suggestions for, like, if a student hits 2 tardies, if a student hits 5, we give them recommendations of where they should go. It includes having conversations with students, using an intervention called using a Post-it note. So, if Mrs. Smith was, or Susie Smith was late to class, I'm going to put her Post-it note on her desk, and she's going to put her name and ID on there and tell me why she was late. Then I'll deal with it another time. So we're providing different interventions and tools for our teachers in regards to how they respond to a student that's late. One thing that we have to, and we said it here, we have to respond to the data. With our new Infinite Campus system, a student's marked tardy, but we're not too sure. We don't know if they're excused or unexcused. So we're asking teachers to use the letter U or E in the system. You have to put it in the comments, and then our technology team will actually write a script that will transform that T into a TE or TU, and then we can look at that data. So right now it's just a T in the system until we convert it into the appropriate code. So that's something that we'll have to ask our teachers to do when students come in tardy. Again, we're asking them to work with the students, work with the families, have those conversations. We know those powerful conversations usually happen through a phone call. It's hard to have a deep conversation through email unless the parent requests it. And what we talked about before is that it's really important all that information is entered into that student's PLP, because the deans use it, the MTSS teams use it, the buildings use it. So we need to know, what supports and conversations have had with the student.
Ms. McDonald, so the excessive tardy is the over 5 minutes. How do you delineate that? Is that just because they're gonna write a referral? Okay,
that's it.
all right, I just wanna make sure.
That's it.
Okay, makes sense.
In regards to security, and I want to go back, so teachers will not write referrals for classroom tardies. They will not write referrals. The only referral they will write is for an excessive tardy.
Okay.
We're asking that between all the supports that we're putting in place in the building, that we're going to handle it up into the MTSS teams. The deans are not handling tardies, only excessive tardies.
So what's the student reflection form?
It's a form that we're giving teachers as a tool to work with our students to reflect on why they're tardy. It's a checklist, and it helps them gauge, it's like a problem-solving tool.
So what's done with the form, like the students fill it out and then what happens? Like the teacher holds on to it, conversation, like?
So it could be a conversation with the student when,
With the
like,
student.
at the end of to understand what's going on, to get to information. So too, they can share that information if they're at a point where they need to call parents. So it's not something that'll necessarily be utilized like the first tardy, that
No, and
happened.
to help clarify, because this is a presentation like for the board, but we have a very detailed one for the teacher. So if I'm a teacher and I've had conversations with my student, I've called home, I've tried the post-it note strategy, I've done the student reflection form, I even have a student teacher agreement, and I'm still struggling, and the student is still coming to my class late, I'm going to contact my academy coordinator, who's my MTSS person, and I'm asking them to do a root cause analysis of what's going on. So there is a limit, like we're asking our teachers to try these things, use these tools, and if things aren't working, please reach out to your MTSS team, and they will take it from there and do a root cause analysis.
That just seems like a lot of steps that a teacher is doing before there's any outside help. If it's like a team approach, it seems like this, teachers are gonna do this, and you just named all these things, and that, I heard like 5 or 6 different things.
It's a team approach if we think about from the building, like the teacher through the building. So let me get through like the different things that are gonna
Okay.
happen in the building so you can see the big picture. Because I don't want, like, it is a team approach. So in regards to security, our security went through training last Friday in regards to de-escalation. So they'll be implementing those techniques with our students, and they will be monitoring our unstructured gathering spaces. So that's another level to respond to students in the building. In regards to our MTSS teams, they will be handling those tardies, those emails from teachers, but also they'll be running a weekly report identifying students that have 10 or more tardy unexcused cumulative. So they'll be running that weekly, looking for trends, doing check-ins with students, check and connect. They'll be running through almost like the dean's administrative plan. They'll have their own step-by-step. So if Mr. Kennedy showed up on my report this week and he's on my report the following week, we may need to take it to the next level. So they're really going to be doing that root cause analysis in partnership with the deans as well, if students have excessive tardies. At the building level, and this is where you'll see the team approach, we're doing hall sweeps. So the buildings will be identifying targeted areas where we know students like to hang out or wander. They'll be doing house sweeps beginning 2 minutes after the bell. What they do is they sort of just direct students into a classroom. They have them sign in. Someone goes in there and talks to them about coming to class on time. They get a pass, and then they go to their class. So those students coming off house sweeps will be marked tardy unexcused by the teacher. But again, it will give us more data on which students are actually hanging out in the hall. At the district level, we'll be also sending out automated messages to families per day. So at the end of the day, we will be processing all our tardies, and if a student has 2 or more tardy unexcused, a parent will be getting a message from the buildings every day saying that your student has been late to class 2 times or more. So I hope you can see it's an all-team approach being proactive, and then it's an all-team approach being reactive.
Well, what I see here on this tardy policy is and from what you said, a kid can be tardy 5, 6 times, and teacher's doing all these things before anyone else steps in to help the teacher. So they could be tardy, you said 5 to 10 tardies on a weekly tardies, is that in one class?
No, the teacher is dealing with their class, which is cumulative, so I'm working with, I would say Matt, and he's tardy to my class now 2 times or 3 times, and really it's the teacher discretion. If I'm tardy twice, and then I'm good, I have it together, and then I'm not tardy again for another 3 weeks, the teacher's gonna work with the kid, with Matt, saying, hey, we may start fresh, or we might start over. But the MTSS teams, they're gonna look at Matt in regards to the whole day. So they're gonna run a report per week that says, okay, Matt was late to your class only once, but to his math class 3 times, and to science 4 times. So they're looking at the Matt's behavior across the whole day, while you as the teacher are working with those individual kids. Does that help?
No, because then that's 10 tardies before MTSS steps in. I'm just concerned that a kid can be tardy twice in 1 week to a teacher for 3 weeks and they're still not getting that support. It's still like, I just see all this and the teacher's doing this and teacher's doing this and the teacher's doing this and teacher's making these weekly phone calls. And I'm like, holy moly, this is a lot that that you're putting on a teacher before anyone steps in to help them. Like, I look at this, and you listed 5 or 6 strategies a teacher should try before someone steps in. And to me, that's a lot. They can miss my class, be tardy 5 times before someone steps in to help me, and I gotta try all these things before I can even reach out for more help?
Well, I guess I would answer that in multiple layers. So really, if Matt is just late to your class multiple times, it's a conversation about, hey, Matt, like, what's going on with you not wanting to go to your English class? You're having that conversation. It could be a situation where the teacher and the student don't have a strong relationship, and that's something that, like, we need to, like, that needs to be worked on. Or the teacher, and we can support the teacher that way. Or the teacher may or may not have strong routines. So really, the way we wrote this is that everybody has a responsibility, but because the student spends so much time in the classroom with the teacher, and those relationships matter so much, like, it really does start at the classroom level.
And I would say, so the safety net, if a teacher feels like the kid is not getting any better, with your example like you gave, if it's consistent and there's a pattern, and I would say 2 times each week for 3 weeks is a pattern, and the teachers tried to talk to the student and the teachers called home and they're not seeing a change, that's when they're gonna reach out to their academy coordinator, and that's where the MTSS team is gonna help and look at, and help the teacher look at, is this an issue just with this student? Is this an issue with more than this student? Is this an issue of the student, meaning that we need to get them supports? So that's how we're gonna start vetting through that, to look at this.
So my issue is you're having teachers do all this, and let's be honest, we know our teachers are working astronomical hours, and now you're gonna ask them to make additional phone calls and do additional things to do this tardy policy, and it's, to me, you're putting one more thing on the teacher that your teachers might not be able to handle. I know personally as a teacher, I would look at this and be like, I don't have time for this. So what are you doing, I guess, in retrospect, like my question should be, what are you doing for the teachers so they have time to implement this policy?
So what we'll do is we'll start looking at what the numbers need to be, because right now, as Mrs. McDonald said, we didn't have the ability to desegregate between unexcused and excused tardies, so we will start having that. So we need teachers to definitely log kids that are tardy, and then we're, again, providing support if the teachers need help with strategies, with instructional coaches, and if there is a problem with a student, that will be working through their academy coordinator with their academy coordinator. We have to just look at where all the students are at. We do believe the tardy issue has gotten a little bit better with call sweeps. So right now, this would be like, how does this look the first week? How does this look the second week? So we're gonna have to manage that over time to see where we're at. And then, of course, talk to teachers to see, because some of them have talked about ideas that they may have too, but really, everybody taking a piece of this and seeing how we can best do this. And if someone's overwhelmed, we'll come up with a strategy with them or for them to help it be more, to help it work. But we need everybody doing their part to attach this, and of course, we don't want anybody feeling overwhelmed. So if there's other ways and we have to drop the numbers because it's too excessive, we'll look at doing that. That's one of the reasons in the presentation, we also put 5 to 10 tardies, because on a weekly basis, how many kids are getting more than 10 tardies? Maybe it's not a lot, and we can drop that and it's 5, and then we can look with classroom teachers, if when a kid gets to 4, this is when we're gonna contact the MSS team. But we have to start looking at where the data is at before we determine exactly what we should be asking and what we shouldn't ask people to do.
So were teachers part of this plan on coming up with this, that they're like, yeah, this is good, this is something that we can take on as teachers?
We did not have a committee because we're responding, and like you said, everybody is so busy right now. So we have talked to individual people have talked to us, and so there wasn't a committee. We can do that for the long term, but this is our response to what's going on right now. And honestly, I mean, it's been a while since I've been in the classroom, but I mean, part of talking to kids and determining what an excused or unexcused tardy is based on their past and understanding where they were at, that's something teachers have always done and will continue to do. And then reaching out to parents, you know, when they see that there might be a problem, that's also something that, you know, teachers have done. So I think it's more the other strategies of the class, and then we can see how much there is to manage, and that's why we're taking this approach. So our promise to you, as well as teachers, is we'll bring an update on a monthly basis to see where we're at with tardies. And I think too, we can survey staff and to see what strategies and what ideas they have. Because we've also had teachers that have come to us and said they don't have a tardy problem at all. Can I help my fellow colleagues? And not necessarily coaches, like there's some teachers that don't have an issue at all. And so I think there's a lot of different ways we're gonna work at that.
So is the union responding, what was the union's response to what you said?
They wanna see what we're gonna do. I mean, right
Well,
now,
I'm
we
s-
just, there wasn't a negative response. They want us to work to make things better.
Did they see this and liked it and thought it was a good idea, and it's not more that you're putting on the teachers?
No, we are talking about it on Thursday, but we talked through that we're coming together with an approach.
Okay.
And the biggest piece that we've already talked about is the excessive. Everybody's seen that, the excessive tardies.
I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of it. I think you're putting way too much on teachers and who are already stressed to their maximum, and saying that they have to make phone calls versus a 30-second email, and then in respect, the building is just making a robocall, and that they get to make the robocall, but you're expecting teachers to make the phone calls. I'm not happy with this, and I'd be interested to see how your teachers respond to this, and if they or think this is a great idea and maybe I'm overreacting, or if I saw this as a teacher, I'd be like, I don't have time for this. And so if you want a policy to work, you have to have teacher buy-in. And when I'm looking at this, I don't see the teacher buy-in, and I would be like, I don't have time to keep track of this, so I'm not gonna do it. So if you want it to work, you have to have buy-in, and I see this, and I don't see buy-in. No, that's all.
Next steps?
Next up.
Dr. Guzman?
So what we plan to do is to continue, and as I said, bring back monthly presentation and updates to the board specifically, but not only, continue to track physical altercations in our schools, because obviously that's been an issue at the start of the school year, as well as tardy data, because we know that is an area for improvement. Also, we're currently reviewing our security structure at each campus, and we plan to have a report out to the Board of Education in November. And then we also plan to have a community meeting regarding climate culture, school procedures, and programs. That would be behavior as well as academic programs and where we're at, and hold one for the district. And we would hold it in a venue where we could accommodate a larger number of people. As you know, our auditoriums are under construction, but perhaps Joliet Central's cafeteria, there's a nice area in there that can accommodate a larger group. And then also, we would do this before we launch our annual discipline committee, where we would, look at our discipline procedures as well as information communicated with the handbook and things that are required by school code. So those are our next steps. And we're happy to answer any questions.
Dr. Guzman, I have a quick question. You mentioned continue to track data, and I know we're only 19 days in to October. Where are we looking in terms of the first 19 days of September, say?
Yeah, so September was a difficult month. There were a lot of student incidents. I could say, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but as far as where we're at right now in October, October has been significantly better than September. The frequency of events, not that we haven't had any, but the frequency of student incidents like fighting have lessened, it looks to, which obviously is good, because then that gives us more time to work with students on their behaviors and things that we need to work on with them.
Good, thank you.
Oh, I was just gonna say on this next step, to kind of, not to leave Ms. Lynn's conversation with a period. I think somehow we need to get to get a feel of what the teachers' union is saying about this. You know, just to have their thought, just to feel how they feel about this process. I know we send to give them orders and tell them what we want them to do, but just like she said, we do need their buy-in to making sure they feel comfortable with this. And if you already know, then this may be a moot point, but I guess since no one said it, so we must not have entertained that.
We can survey teachers. I don't think I can answer on behalf of 300 and some teachers.
Right.
What I can say is we have teachers that are at all different levels of the continuum.
Okay.
I've met one-on-one with teachers who, you know, are feeling like things are going really well in their classroom and they have a lot of information and strategies to share and they're not having a tardy problem at all. And I've gotten emails to that effect as well. And then teachers have also asked to speak with me that, you know, are having issues with tardies. So I think we'll get a continuum. But what we could do is we could survey staff.
That's fine.
And we could see where they're at. And then again, that can be part of our update and we can track where teachers are at. Because sometimes you have to try things too to see how they're gonna go. And again, we're trying different approaches so that we're not excluding kids from class for things like tardies. And so it is a little different than what we've done before. And we understand the hesitancy. I understand where everybody's at.
Okay.
I just thinking, as we're making these policies, and we don't have to have a huge committee of teachers, but having a gathering of 10 teachers voicing input and helping developing the plan or showing them a plan and getting input before it's implemented would help tremendously in the process.
Can I just say, one of the things that we mentioned, and I guess I can't talk about specific things, but we talk about relationship building every day, all day, and one of the things we say is, when there's discipline, for example, we say, how many teacher contacts were there? And I feel like, I mean, a kid that's close to me, the one and only time she was late, she actually got a call immediately to person, and they had a conversation. She hasn't been late again, never again. We have teachers that email our parents back 15, 20 times a day over one thing. I feel like we need to remember that most of our administrators were also teachers at one point or another for a long time. And I think that just making the phone call sometimes is part of that relationship building, and that a lot of times making the phone call is part of relationship building. So I feel like a lot of teachers would be on board with this, but like you said, maybe there's a continuum. I just don't see it being like, there's so much that teachers, you're right, already do. And this is one thing that can be a problem-solving issue as opposed to a problem for a teacher. I think we need to remember some of those things. That's all.
If there's no questions, that concludes the reports.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for the
you.
reports.
Thank you.
We thank you so much for you. So now we go to recognitions and rewards, and I see that there's nothing from Central Campus, West Campus, north of the district. So then we go to our action items. Action item A. Action item A, protocols for the use of 2021-22 emergency COVID-19 paid administrative leave days. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions?
No, I'm really excited for the work you guys put in to get this done. I think it's just another way that we're trying to help provide for our staff through these times, and I think we've tried to do a nice job of that throughout the process. So thank you for your work.
Appreciate that, yeah.
I had a question. There was some clarity around if a family member gets COVID. I think I saw in there, and I don't have the page pulled up, where it spoke to children, but it didn't speak to spouses. Am I correct in?
Yes, so the children would be for supervision if they're under the age of 12, and therefore they wouldn't have access to the vaccine. It would not be necessarily for a spouse, because if you're vaccinated, you can still do tests to stay and work. So you would not necessarily get COVID days. But what's important to note is we would have to look at each situation and go through and make sure, because it's very situational.
Well, and if you're vaccinated, if you test to stay and you were to test positive, you could still utilize
Correct.
those days for yourself,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that point.
okay.
Our hearts clear?
Yeah, thank you.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Edmund?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Namir?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Can I have a motion to approve B, resolutions for providing issues not to exceed $7,250,000 general obligation limit tax refunding school bonds for the purpose of refunding certain outstanding bonds of the district, providing for the levy of direct annual tax to pay principal and interest on said bonds, and authorizing the sale of said bonds to Raymond James and Associates Incorporated.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Now, you might ask why I'm reading this, because we have people that might not be seeing this,
Right.
and I know that this is turned over to Dr. Hampton. I wasn't gonna read, I was just gonna tell Dr. Hampton to take over.
And I know Ms. Hennessy is here to give you all an update on what has transpired from
What else?
September to now.
Microphone's off.
There you go.
Good evening, thanks for having me. So tonight, the board, this is the last action the board will have to take on this. It is the approval of the resolution to issue the refunding of the 2012 A bonds. The district stands to refund, to save approximately $1 million of interest on the bonds over the life of the bonds. And this resolution authorizes the district to move forward with no further action within certain parameters, minimum savings, with the approval of board delegates, which include the Assistant Superintendent for Business and Finance and the Board President. We anticipate the sale will happen early in that first week of November. We should get the bond rating back on Friday and be ready to go.
So I have a question. These bonds are pre-sold, so we don't have any sale risk?
They're not sold yet, no. They won't be sold until we get the bond rating and we're able to get in the market, which I anticipate to be that first week in November.
My concern then is that our motion here is authorizing the sale of said bonds to Raymond James and Associates.
Within certain parameters, which are set forth in the resolution. Like there's a minimum savings amount, maximum coupons, certain levies, and all those things. So the final sale will be approved by the Assistant Superintendent for Finance and the Board President as the board delegates. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I will add, so once it's final, I then will communicate to Mr. Edmund, and then we will put together a summary to the full board so that you all know what the final outcome is of the sale, the savings, the interest rates, and all of those types of things. So that'll happen after the closing.
Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Edmund?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Namir?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Motion to approve C, bid results, policy 4/600. 60, sorry.
So moved.
Second.
Questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Edmund?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Numer?
Yes.
Motion to approve D, disposal of old equipment.
So moved.
Second.
Questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Guerrero Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Edmund?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Approval to, motion to approve E, donations.
So moved.
Second.
Questions?
No, just a thank you. This was from Deb Cole. She worked previously in the program I worked in AVAC. I never had the privilege of working with her, but I heard so many good things about her, and I'm so happy that she's giving back to the kids. So thank you, Ms. Cole.
Yes. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Edmund?
Yes. Motion to approve F, Lincoln RSSP request.
So moved.
Questions?
No, just happy that we're gonna try and get into this program. Good, excited to see the data, Mr. Markham. I'm hoping that we see some improvement. If we can be more involved with the kids while they're at Lincoln, I hope that gives us a benefit.
Ditto. Roll call, please.
Mr. Edmund?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Motion to approve G, second reading of 5-year review, 1 through 9.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mr. Edmund?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Sorry. Motion to approve H, second reading of board policy, 1 through 16.
So moved.
Second.
Questions? No? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Edmund?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Motion to approve action item I, personal report.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
And that's approving 1 through
15.
15. No questions, though. Roll call, please.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Edmund?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
A motion to approve J, student discipline recommendation.
After receiving and deliberating the information contained in the hearing officer's report, the Board of Education is charged with deciding, 1, whether removing the child from his or her learning environment is in the best interest of the school. 2, what the rationale is for the specific duration of the recommended expulsion. 3, whether all appropriate and available behavioral and disciplinary interventions were exhausted. And 4, whether the continued presence in school would either A, pose a threat to the safety of other students, staff, or members of the school community, or B, substantially disrupt, impede, or interfere with the operation of school. The Board of Education must then convene in public session to formally vote on the motion to expel, if the expulsion is in the consensus arrived at during executive session. I propose a motion for case number C212204 to recommend expulsion until June of 2022 and place at Lincoln School.
Second.
Need a second.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Edmund?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Numer?
Yes.
I move in regards to case number W212205, recommend expulsion until June 2022, placement at Lincoln School.
Second.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Guerrero Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Edmund?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
I move in case number W212206, recommend expulsion until June of 2022 and place at Lincoln School.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Edmund?
Yes.
I move for case number C212207, recommend expulsion until June of 2022 and place at Lincoln School.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Edmund?
Yes.
Mrs. Lynn?
Yes.
Mrs. Guerrero Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Unfinished business? New business, student dress code.
That was placed on the agenda, because there was a letter that was sent to the board, from a student that was forwarded, and then also a board member had requested previously that it be placed on the agenda, so.
So basically, we had like several hundred students fill out petitions regarding our dress code, and their basically disdain for it. They felt that we were, basically, we shouldn't be dress coding certain violations, specifically in regards to girls' clothing, in regards to, was it do-rags, bonnets, it was in regard to like spaghetti straps, shorts being too short. I personally feel that some of our students should dress more conservatively, but we are a school board, so we should listen to students and their remarks and just give them a voice. And so I just thought we should all know that they were filing petitions, several hundred of them. And it was a movement that kind of went across the nation, Will County for sure, several other school districts, Lincoln Way, et cetera. So I think we should pay attention to them and listen to them when they talk and they speak and just share their voice.
Any other comments?
Is there anything particular in our school dress code we need to take a look at, or?
I mean, if you were to ask our students, their answer would be yes. And so, dress code presents difficult decisions, difficult enforcement. There are schools that have taken different approaches. Our approach has been related to safety and security, which we had some things in place. Like, for example, if I can go back to boys wearing earrings, that was a long time ago. I feel like it was a long time ago. I don't know. It could have been yesterday, but that's now allowed because that was no longer deemed like a gang symbol, or so that's an example of a change that was made. So there are schools that have done different things. So that would be, determined by the board
things are in policy right now. So, we of course could look at it if the board wanted us to look at it. We just want to know where the board is at with that.
Didn't we already address, didn't we already have a committee that formed?
Yes.
That looked at the dress code?
Like a year or two ago, but this is a new thing that they're doing across the United States and in our county.
Well, let me share my concern, especially in the case of do-rags. Do-rags is considered a headgear. We don't allow students to wear headgear. And so what we found was that other students were wearing their hoods and hats and refused to remove them due to a group of students wearing do-rags. Do-rags are not cultural, and I'm not in favor of them. And so I'm not sure what the issue is around students not wearing do-rags.
I'm not for it either. I've already stated that. I've already did my research on it. I know about it. It's from my culture, so they can't tell me about my culture when I know it's about us. I talk to barbers in our area, and you can't get a barber that I know that would validate the wearing of do-rags in school. None. And the time that we were talking about that, people were screaming about the hats, and then they pointed to the people, the do-rags. And the do-rags don't have anything to do with your headgear that you need to wear in school. And it almost feels insulting if people don't, to us, that is of the African American area, and of parents. I even surveyed the parents that I know of kids that were in school and asked them, what do you think about kids wearing do-rag? I couldn't find a one. There was not a one. We don't think that that's something that our community will be fighting and clamoring and tearing down the schools that ask that our child should be wearing a do-rag. A do-rag it's supposed to be worn at night. It's supposed to be worn for kids having waves. It's not supposed to be worn all day, because if they wear it all day, I'm just going to be blunt, their hair will be stinking. And we know that. So you're preaching to the choir when you tell us that do-rags is acceptable. They're not.
I would like to address the girl part, the girl dress
And that's
code.
what most of the signatures are regarding.
I have to agree with the students. As a parent that shopped, it's very difficult to find shorts that would meet code, especially girls that have long legs. And the shorts that I can find that would meet dress code are double the price, triple the price. And I do feel that, you know, if girls feel comfortable wearing something and their parents are comfortable wearing it, we can have some limitations, but what I allow my daughter to wear shouldn't impact what another parent allows their daughter to wear. And it just goes back to that culture of shaming girls for their bodies and what they have. And as an educator, I was very strictly enforced dress code years ago, and now I don't say anything because, you know, I don't feel that it is my place. And you know, you can still, as teachers and educators, have conversations of like, you're going on a job interview, what are you wearing? And have those conversations then, and still make those teachable moments.
I agree with you in the enforcement of the dress code. Some of the things that the letter that we read stated and how the dress code is being enforced, specifically what's being said to some of these girls. This is not the first time I've heard something like that. And the way that we talk to these girls when they are being dress coded is not good.
Well, one shirt on someone, and I'll be reading using specifically what they say in a letter, who's large-chested versus the same shirt on someone who is small-chested is going to, one could get dress coded and one could not, just because of the size of their chest. And that shouldn't be the case for dress codes.
I don't know if there's training or something that needs to be done, because the way that some teachers reportedly have dress coded people is not right.
And not just in our district, again, this is across the county, across the United States, and how it's enforced. And it goes back to the whole idea of body shaming. And we have enough girls, 1 in 3, that will be sexually abused or assaulted by the time they're 18. And one of the things I often hear, unfortunately, is, well, what were you wearing? We literally ask that, whether it's law enforcement, it's social workers, we ask them things like that. And it needs to be addressed, and it needs to stop. And, you know, again, we might be one school district in the United States, but it's something that we can look at and be more equitable with, and fair, and how we practice.
It is also a money issue. The conservative clothes are definitely, as someone who attends Troy District, and how much money I spent on uniforms compared, which are conservative, compared to shopping at Discovery, which is very cheap, it is an equity issue on price tags of the clothing.
It's like we're making the case for uniforms in here, but.
No.
Actually, she's saying the opposite.
I said it, I spent
But
a
I'm
lot of
saying
money on
Those are
uniforms.
the same reasoning used for, not that I want to do that, but it is. We know districts locally that have went there for those same reasons. The thing I would say, without knowing the history and the committee that was put together, is if we're applying the policy consistently, I don't think there's as much of an issue. If do-rags are bad, then hats and hoodies should be bad.
Correct.
But I think as I was a black young man, I used to wear a do-rag, and I'll be honest, I would be upset if somebody got to wear a hoodie and a hat, and I couldn't wear my do-rag. I think it's more about that, the equity.
Equity
Yes.
and
Then,
discipline.
yeah, if this girl can wear this shirt, but this girl can't, that's when you have the issue. It's not necessarily what they're wearing. So I just would kind of what Daniel was saying is, let's look at and make sure we're applying our current dress code consistently.
The problem is one shirt on one girl is acceptable, and the same shirt on another girl is not acceptable because of the size of her chest.
That shouldn't be the case.
But that's according to the dress code, and what you're covering up, it is. And that's where the inequity lies, is depending on your body shape and size, one pair of shorts on one girl are okay, but on another girl, they're not. And most of these inconsistencies come with girls.
They do.
And so
Me
that's where the
personally-
problem lies.
Me personally, if you're wearing the same shirt and you fill it out a little more, I don't, that's a decision I'm making on if it's appropriate or not. I don't, nothing.
That's the problem that teachers are up against, so.
But if she's, and I haven't read our dress code completely, but I know things like arm length, right? It's talked about. Cleavage is talked about. You can be covered up and still, look seductive, right? So to me, it's more in the eye of the beholder, right? And that's where the shrink, because it should be, the policy should be rigorous enough to keep everyone looking like a child, right? But it should also be applied equitably to where if they wear the same 2 shirts, it should be okay, right? If it covers the belly button, they're not showing cleavage, it meets the whatever length that's required, it should be applied evenly. And like I said, from personal experience, that has not been the case. And kids rebel, right? They say, I'm gonna wear it because you let such and such wear it. And that's where I think that's what we gotta do, just apply what we have correctly, because I did a sample of the schools, and the paraprofessionals did talk about the dress code and how they didn't feel supported in making decisions about whether things were appropriate or not.
I think we should, if something, I know we can talk about questionable things, because I can't really judge, because, my daughters are out of school.
Yeah, mine was just there.
But I'm just saying, it's gotta be fair.
You know,
But when I was just talking on the do-rags, and that was part of the handbook. And so I don't think that really should be a discussion when we already said no headgear.
Again, it wasn't, like an attack, and I know you did all that work, and really just, again, about fairness across the board, regardless of what the item is. Like you said, no hats, no do-rags, we got that. It's really, if you really want to break it down, and the 99% of those signatures was about females
Okay,
and what
that's
they're
fine.
wearing.
So I
We
think
need to remove the word distraction from
Yes.
when we're dress coding somebody. Distracted to who?
Well, that's the thing. I think what Mr. Bean's talking about and the point you're just making is it needs to be more objective and less subjectivity in it, right? Because then somebody has to determine that it's a distraction. And then what is a distraction to each person could be somewhat different. So just coming up with an idea to make it more objective so that it's equitable for each one of our kids.
How would you like us to handle this? There's a couple different ways. It came from students. Do you want us to put together a committee of students and teachers and parents to talk through this as part of maybe the committee that looks at all of our rules, like a subcommittee? Because when the headgear, and I could be wrong, that went through the discipline committee piece and back to the board. There wasn't, to my knowledge, a dress code committee that was
So
formed.
could we also include like security guards, because they're on the front lines of identifying this stuff?
We could include different,
And the
you
dean,
know,
does
roles
it usually go to a dean if the kid's not complying and there's a question? So maybe those people who are all involved in making that decision as well, and then all the people in the room can kind of have a conversation with each other
And
and
again,
find some objectivity.
including the students,
Yeah.
and giving them a voice that they're asking for.
Yeah.
okay, I can come back to the board in November with a plan that you can look at for us to get this work done so that we could be prepared for next school year.
Okay? Everybody okay with that?
Sounds good.
Board reports? No.
Other than we got trunk or treat coming up this Thursday.
Oh, that's right, Chuck E.
Yes, for the Key Club at Joliet West, it's from 4 to 6. There was a link on the message if you'd like to sign up. And I'm sure they would appreciate if you brought your own candy so that all the kiddos can get all the candy they desire. Or I know other goodies that people have talked about.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I will be there. I might even wear a costume.
Oh, okay.
So we got it.
Let's go on the district website if she does.
I just have cute leggings.
Announcement, public comments, don't look like public comments.
Yes, there's one.
There's one?
Would you like, okay.
Okay.
Actually, there's two, but I think I saw a gentleman late. Mr. Fitzpatrick? Mr. John Lucas?
Hey, everybody.
How's it going?
How y'all doing? I'm John Lucas, Seven to the Light organization. A couple of things to say. As I was looking at presentation on AP, and you all are trying to figure out how to get Black students more engaged. Number one, parents. A lot of parents don't. I'm finding, as an independent academic advisor, is that a lot of Black parents don't understand actually how smart their children are, and the importance of an AP class. So sometimes you can talk to a child, but you really need to talk to their parent. So with that, do you all have liaisons to the Black community, Black liaisons? I know that in previous meetings, there's been talks of like more Spanish-speaking, liaisons, so on and so forth. And I think it's important for you to realize that you also need to have Black liaisons so that these parents see Black faces. Because just because you speak the same language does not mean they trust you or what you have to say. Now, as an academic advisor and the students that I'm dealing with, I'm just going to tell you what I'm seeing. There is, throughout the nation, there is a huge emphasis on math and science, math and science, math and science, right? Well, when a student is applying to college, the first thing they have to give is the essay, English. And these kids' written grammar is trash. It is really bad. Technology has eaten them up. They are really dependent on Grammarly and spell check, where, of course, I'm class of 94. We had a spelling test every Friday. You know, those things were, you know, kind of ingrained in our heads, and these kids do not have that. So I think that there needs to be some type of initiative to make sure that these kids' writing skills and their English usage is up to par. Otherwise, it could be detrimental in their acceptance to colleges. As well, I'm hearing from a lot of students, or actually experiencing with students, them being told, well, you know, you only need 3 math years to graduate. That is true. But there are many academic programs in higher institutions that you will not be able to get into with 3 years of math. So I think a lot of kids are being railroaded because they're not told the whole truth. Yes, it is true that 3 years of math will get you to graduate, but it won't get you into a lot of colleges, and they're not being told that. I had a student who literally had a 3.8 GPA, awesome kid, one of my most responsible kids, applied to a school that she should have gotten into, and she didn't get into it because she only had 3 years of math. And no one told her, you really should take that 4th year of math. I think that a lot of teachers are fatigued, especially with virtual learning, so on and so forth. I was talking to another student, and he heard from a teacher, it's pre-calc class, pre-calculus, and they said, you know, this is one of the hardest classes that you're going to take. You know, so, you know, kind of encouraging them to leave instead of saying, get ready to work. You know, and so I think that needs to be addressed and looked into to make sure that these kids reach their full potential. And last but not least, again, my name is John Lucas. I run a nonprofit called 7 to the Light. I'm an independent academic advisor. It has been a journey trying to infiltrate your system, right? The fortress, if you have. I've talked to Mr. Markham. I've talked to Ms. Clark as well. And I know that you guys have a lot of rules and regulations that you're trying to figure out. But what I do know is last year I had a small group of kids. I got a kid waitlisted to Harvard, 2 waitlisted to NYU, acceptances to Tulane, Baylor, Vanderbilt, Georgia Tech, North Carolina A&T, and Xavier, Louisiana. It's working. I'm here to do the work. I'm here and I'm ready. Let me in to see your kids. November 1st is the deadline for early decision. Most black kids don't decide that they want to go to college until March. They should be applying now, but I can't get my hands on them. Please let me in. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all.
That's it.
Thank you. So make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Lynn? Mrs. Guerrero-Numer?
Yes.
Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Mr. Coffey?
Yes.
Mrs. Stiff?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Henry?
Yes.